So I'd love to just jump right in with you. Again, hopefully you can see my screen properly. Oh, Montreal as well. Wonderful. Well, I'm so grateful to have you all here with me. Just to give you a rundown of who I am, my name is Kristen Mandela. I'm from Toronto, Ontario, and I work for Earth Day Canada, which is a nonprofit organization whose mission it is to help people just like you reduce their environmental impact through simple daily action. So we have set up the Food Fight program with the help of Eco IGA Fund and a team of 25 people who work year round towards this goal. So I'm really excited to have the next hour or so together, give or take. Well, it'll be take if anything, it'll be less than an hour if anything. But I will have my chat open through the entirety of our time together. You can also unmute yourself. I'm happy to be interrupted at any time if you have any questions or have any knowledge to add in. But at the end of our session, we'll have some time to go over some questions as well. So let's get right into it. So Earth Day Canada. Oh, North Bay. I love this. Thanks for sharing where everyone's from. I really appreciate it. Earth Day Canada creates programs and workshops just like this to make sustainable action accessible and actionable, not just on April 22, which is Earth Day, but every single day of the year. And the Eco IGA Fund has existed since 2008, and IGA merchants contribute a portion of their revenues to it. So each year they contribute up to $1 million to Earth Day Canada, and this allows us to run several programs, which is like their action and reduction. So a team of 5 people support all IGAs in their waste management, reduction, and recovery. We also have the Traveling Jar, which is an awareness raising tour in IGAs across Quebec and New Brunswick on food preservation techniques, eating local, and all that good stuff when it comes to food. And then we have the Food Fight program, which is a wonderful program that combats good food waste that has been offering workshops and free tools over the past 8 years all over Quebec and New Brunswick. So we have 3 different anti-waste workshops that are offered over the course of the year on the subjects of planning, preserving, cooking, all of which are available resources for you to use. So we're going to have a newsletter and website to keep you up to date on the latest news and upcoming workshops. We have the anti-waste community with over 4,000 members. And then we have an anti-waste booklet and many other tools that we'll share with you throughout the workshop. The tools will also be all sent to you in the days following our time together, so you don't have to worry about missing out on any of our resources. So again, thank you so much for being here and for taking the time. I realize that we all have very busy lives to lead, but setting aside some time today to just realize how important it is to reduce our food waste. It really means a lot to me, it means a lot to the organization, and I do feel it like it means a lot to the planet overall. So let's go over some main points that we'll be going over. Greenhouse gas emissions, so methane in our landfill versus our compost, the resources used and wasted. 63% of what we throw away at home could be preserved. So that's a pretty startling statistic right off the bat. 63% could be preserved or used in an alternative mean. And $1,100 are lost per year per average family household. So that's for 2 adults and 2 kids average in Canada. So it's over $1,000 of good hard-earned money. And we all know that with the cost of everything going up, obviously, any way we can reduce the impact on the planet, but also on our wallets. I really love that about sustainability, that those things often go hand in hand, or at least they should more often than not. So we're going to get all into that. So let's get into the Food Fight program with the support of the Eco IGA Fund. So just to get it started, I am going to ask for your engagement in the chat. I would really love to hear why are some reasons that you feel like you create a little bit of extra waste, at least more waste than you'd like to on an average day. So why do you think that we waste? I think it's important to have a bit of introspection at the beginning to kind of understand what part of our lifestyle or our behaviors from the get-go kind of have a barrier for us to reducing waste. Worry about a lack. Fear of getting ill, that's a great one. Buying more than we can use, food spoilage and improper storage. These are all fantastic. Absolutely. And here are some ones that we also felt come up a lot in these conversations. We mentioned this: buying too much. You call for a little bit of dill in a recipe and they give you a whole bushel of dill and you have no idea how to use it all in time. We forget what we've bought, the classic disorganized fridge, and there's like some creepy crawlies growing in the back of our fridge that we don't realize are still there. Running out of time. We're all incredibly busy. This was already said by Sue: food spoilage. We don't store it properly. Best before dates. Maybe we have a understanding of being a really hard line with best before dates. And we don't know what to cook or how to cook it. So these are the options that came up a lot on our end. And we're really going to be spending most of our time focusing on these last 2 points. So best before dates, and we're not knowing how to store things properly. Carmen has said buying without a list. That's a really good That's a really great one as well. I really feel like the responsibility in my shopping really varies very significantly when I go in fed, not grumpy, with a list, and I have gone through my kitchen and my cabinets, rather than when I go like right after work or something and I'm not thinking. I end up buying things that I probably shouldn't, that also probably has way more packaging than I need to. But yeah, that's a great one as well. So there is an anti-waste booklet. We are going to be sharing this with you as well. It's exclusive to the participants of the Food Fight workshops, and it's going to guide you through all the habits, the stages of changing your habits to reduce your food waste. It's also going to be emailed to you, as I said. And they're really helpful in terms of understanding kind of your actions, what you can do, and it covers more than just today's workshop. So it'll accompany you through all the workshops. So look out for that when it'll get emailed to you at the end of our time. Helen has also said living in an apartment. This is something that's actually very important. No way to have compost. This is obviously going to vary very much according to your region. So that's a great point as well. So breaking out of the status quo. So we're going to be focusing a little bit of our time on the things that we do as individuals. I also really want to stay from the get-go. It's really important that we don't put too much pressure on ourselves. It's better that 1,000 or 1,000,000 people do their best imperfectly than having a handful of people trying to do everything perfectly. Also, what is perfect within the sustainability space? That's a whole other conversation. We're all not in the same place in our fight against food waste. But we can all make a difference by taking one step at a time. It's important that our first step is kind of breaking out of the status quo, kind of getting an understanding of kind of some habits that might not be the most helpful in terms of reducing our food waste, and then setting ourselves up for success and maintaining these challenges long term. So that's why it's really important for us to all get to know our own pace, our own lifestyle, and avoid comparisons and feeling guilty if you see somebody that's able to keep all of their food waste in like a tiny little jar. Great for them. That's awesome. That's not going to be me. As much as I'm equipped and understand these things, it's not within my wheelhouse. And that's really important for us to all kind of go at our own pace, and allow this to actually be a great opportunity for us to explore our relationship with our food, and increase our gratitude and our awareness for our relationship with our food. So we're going to be getting into the world of conservation. So knowing how to store our food in the optimal way can extend its shelf life considerably, and it gives us more time to cook it. So proper storage has a huge impact on reducing waste. This was already said as well. And reducing waste also means saving money, which is always a bonus. So preservation is really one of the keys to success. And today we're going to be covering a lot of the best tips for extending the shelf life of all of our favorite foods. So let's dive into it. One thing I wanted to talk about before we do is talking about best before dates. So it's essential to address the famous issue of best before dates, because I really feel like we get so hung up. At least I do. I grew up in a house where my mom always was like, no, it's not bad until there's mold on it. And it made me really have this adverse reaction where now I feel like I have to throw things out the minute it hits the day on the expiration date. But really, the definition of a best before date is an assurance that your product, if it's stored under the exact same conditions and remains unopened, will retain the same appearance, smell, texture, and taste. But once it's open, the expiration date is actually no longer valid. So oftentimes you'll see this with like something like yogurt. The yogurt says it's not going to go bad for months and months and months, but you open it and then a few weeks later or whatever, it might not do well. So really what we're talking about is making sure that we kind of keep an eye on a few things that can kind of keep us safe. So first is to trust our senses. This is a thermo guide. This is actually unfortunately only in French at the moment, but I do believe that they're going to try to track down an English version just because Earth Day Canada is predominantly in like a francophone organization. But I'm sure the internet will have lots of resources and we will track it down and we will send it to you as well. But really, I think it's important for us to just demystify the world of best before dates and give ourselves permission, if we haven't already done so already, to eat things even if maybe the best before date has already passed. It's important to trust your intuition. I really feel like the internet at the end of the day is your friend. Don't be afraid to look it up. Don't be afraid to discern using your senses, a strange smell, an appearance, taste, signs that it might be good to go. But oftentimes, even if things have passed their hardline best before date, they are still good to consume up to 3 weeks after the best before date. So, yeah, there we go. Let's get into fridge, counter, or pantry. So when you return from the grocery store, let's not underestimate the importance of storing our food correctly. Not everything has to go into the fridge, and often it can actually not necessarily harm the food, but not actually be the best preservation technique for it. So if you buy food on the shelf or the fridge of a grocery store, you can kind of do the same at home. So if you buy things at on the shelf in the grocery store, usually if it remains unopened or uncut or anything like that, it can remain on kind of the pantry shelf or on the countertop of your kitchen. And if things are found in the grocery fridge, then it's good to stay in the fridge of your home. There's obviously exceptions to this, but that's usually kind of like a hard and fast rule. Climacentric foods are foods that continue to ripen once you've brought them home or once they've been picked off of the tree or plant that they grow on. So it's best to store those in the fridge to extend its shelf life. And then there's things like garlic, onions, potatoes, root vegetables. It's best to keep these things away from the light and away from moisture to prevent mold and sprouting. And it's actually super interesting. I love learning stuff about this because I think that it's so cool seeing the relationship that things can have, even an invisible relationship. So potatoes and onions taste amazing together, are not best mates when it comes to storing them together. Potatoes and onions, I think they release an enzyme that actually gets both of them to sprout and sour faster. So it's better to actually store them both away from the light, both in dry conditions, but separately to have them store for longer. And also things like oils, spices, and dried herbs, keep them away from the light as best as possible. I know it's very beautiful and aesthetic to have things in like these nice clear glass containers or in these clear countertops or like shelving, but it's really best for oils and spices to stay away from the light, although that does look really beautiful. Let's play a quick game. I'm going to say a product and you guys can put it in the chat where it would be best to store it. So if I was to buy a tomato, where are you going to store that puppy? Is it going to be on the countertop? Is it going to be in the fridge? Is it going to be with your potatoes in the pantry? Where do you think? Nice. So I will say it's kind of, there's no wrong answers really. You can obviously store your tomato in the fridge. Oftentimes it can be getting it cold like that can get it to be a little bit milly. Once it's been cut, it can go in the fridge. I love using a little bit of beeswax wrap that keeps those things fresh for a while. But usually if you buy a tomato, it is good to stay on the counter. How about an avocado? It's kind of a trick question, I guess, because there's such a quick window where avocados are really perfect to be eaten. I don't know if anyone has seen those memes where one day, yeah, you guys are smart. Nice. Not near the bananas. Don't eat avocados, then you don't have to worry about it. Yeah, amazing. Thanks for playing along. I appreciate it. I think really what this is just trying to encourage, I guess, is a sense of curiosity. And maybe you can understand some of your habits. Like these are things that I didn't always think about. You kind of have these unconscious patterns, and sometimes they're actually not the best method of doing things. So I really encourage, again, if the internet is your friend like it is for me, giving things a quick Google, staying really curious, and being open to changing patterns if maybe they aren't the best way of storing your food. So now we're going into the most capricious or unpredictable. So, in your opinion, which foods are wasted the most and are most likely to end up kind of wasted? So there's fruits and vegetables, Oh, wait, sorry. I wasn't supposed to give you the option. Yeah, veggies. Trailing got it. Yeah, absolutely. So fruits and veggies are wasted 45, they take up 45% of all food waste. Anything else that people think that are often wasted that could make up the rest of this percentage? Veggies and salad are a big one. Oh, berries. Yeah, absolutely. Nice. Dairy. Absolutely. That's the next one. Yes. Okay. So the next is actually leftovers, which is at 13%. And then we have bakery and dairy and meat products. And then that's all the percentages they gave me. But it's really fruits and vegetables that give us the most of this trouble. So let's take a little bit of a closer look into this food category specifically. I think we can all admit that we have probably not stored a lot of our fruits and veggies properly, or if we don't know, we could be doing it and prolonging its life for a lot longer. So they're less likely to kind of get forgotten on the back of our fridge and turn into unnecessarily food waste. And Wendy, you are jumping ahead, but we are absolutely going to be talking about freezing things as well. So stick with this. So we are going to talk about how to use our fridge properly and also managing humidity in our fridge. So our fridge, when we're looking at our fridge, they are beautiful. They're designed very well to keep our food in good condition, but it's really interesting because the temperature can actually vary very significantly based on where you are storing your foods. This is something that I actually didn't know before I started working with Earth Day Canada. So if it's near the air vent, it's going to be its coolest. That's best for things like dairy products and meats. On the door, it's where it's the warmest, pretty significantly, actually. So it's best for shelf-stable foods like sauces, pickles, all of our good condiments. The fruit and veggie drawer are obviously best for exactly that, fruit and veggie. You can use usually like the little tab to increase or decrease air circulation. And it's always best to put a dry cloth at the bottom to absorb excess moisture. That's usually what's going to be the issue is like condensation on your fruits and veg, adding that moisture, which is going to lead to mold. And this is the hardest thing that I actually find is keeping it neither too full or too empty. So if it's too full, it's really hard to see everything is that you have. It increases the risk of food spoiling. If it's too empty, you can't like food can actually get a little bit too cold and that can throw off things as well. And it's important not to block any of the outlets or any of the fan or vents to ensure that there's good circulation and preservation and to keep it clean. Easier said than done, but cleaning the fridge and at least keeping it somewhat organized helps you stay with inventory for what you have so you don't go to the grocery store and buy 3 extra things of things that are already sitting in your fridge. And again, it kind of avoids that losing the Tupperware container at the back of your fridge of leftovers that you've long since forgotten about. Another important element is to manage humidity. Usually it's an element of kind of too much or too little moisture. So fruits and vegetables obviously contain a lot of moisture and they lose it easily once they're picked and once they're back in our homes, which can really be a headache in terms of storing them properly. So moisture management is the name of the game. Again, usually dealing with too much, which is kind of condensation, mold issues, where you kind of get those like slimy things that happen, not my favorite, or too little dehydrated. That's kind of when you see like wilted lettuce or like those really sad kind of wrinkly carrots. So let's talk about how we can manage if there is too much water. Um, Best thing for things like mushrooms, paper bags are amazing. They kind of absorb a little bit of the extra water. A perforated bag is great for things like peppers, carrots, beans, grapes. Adding a clean dry cloth to its storage container or a Tupperware. This works great with things like spinach, mixed lettuce, sprouts. I really recommend avoiding pre-cutting or pre-washing your foods. But if you do really want to pre-cut or pre-wash for time's sake, just make sure that you dry them off well before returning them into the fridge. And then, yeah, unwrapping them from their initial containers can also help too, because sometimes, depending on how they're wrapped and the container that they're in, it might also increase moisture retention. So if things are not getting enough water, they're kind of going to wilt and they're going to soften. We've all seen that before. Things that are great for that, hermetic containers, great example, a mason jar. We all have the kind of or I don't know if everyone has, but I have that like random shelf in my kitchen that is just like located to all of my good jars. I don't know what I'm gonna do with all them yet, but it's always great to have some good jars on hand. These things are really great for things like berries, and just like anything really you could put in a mason jar. I love mason jars. You can wrap things in a clean, damp cloth. Lettuce really likes this, other greens as well. And feet in the water. You could submerge in water things like strawberries, beans, sprouts, asparagus, as in the illustration. This is great. I would really recommend, though, to remind yourself, set a little alarm to make sure that you change that water frequently, just because it can get a little funky. This is also great for things like herbs that you can kind of keep going. I do this with my green onions on the counter, put them in a little bit of water. Infinity green onions. So again, let's chat about how we can store different things. So let's say, actually, I'm really curious for things, if you are somebody that consumes dairy, what do you like to do with your butter? I have a lot of conversations about this. Maybe it's because I talk about food waste a lot, but I feel like people are either butter in the fridge people or butter on the counter people. And I'd love to know if you do consume butter. I grew up with a butter on the counter family situation. With butter, it really is kind of more of what you're accustomed to. There's no really wrong answer. If you have like a butter bell or something like that, where it can keep um, both. Nice. Counter except in the summer. Fantastic. That makes sense. Um, freezer. Yeah, honestly, that's fair. I probably, yeah, that's more than fair. So I think it's really important too that we have to understand what works with us. So something like butter is not going to be like this cut and dry answer. Maybe things like blueberries, we can put like a small cloth down, keep it in a mason jar or a Tupperware container. Things like nuts, peanuts actually do very well in the freezer. But there's just like no hard and fast right and wrong answer if it is something that you're using in your own way. I just encourage you to stay on top of it so that we're reducing food waste whenever we can. So we're going to be talking about freezing. We prefer to use optimal preservation techniques to consume food bought fresh, rather than having to freeze it to avoid losing it. But I do really feel like freezing is such a great asset when it comes to reducing food waste. I've used so many great techniques, like even when it comes to things like herbs, there's just no need to throw them away if you don't have to. So I wouldn't say it's like a fail safe. I do think that it's an asset, but it is obviously great to be able to keep things fresh as well whenever you can. So it also is great because freezing things, especially at certain temperatures, and depending on when you freeze it, is a great way to preserve the nutrients that are in those foods. So we're definitely not shaming freezing at all. I think it's fantastic, but I think it's important to keep in mind that when you do freeze something, you are kind of freezing it at that moment of its freshness. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well, but that's important to keep in mind. So from grocery store to the freezer, so things that do really well in the freezer are baked goods, making sure that our bread sticks around, really hard cheeses, nuts do very well in the freezer. And then somebody mentioned this earlier as well, with freezer burn meats, but this is non-freezer burn meats. Meats, obviously, if they're purchased in a large quantity, or if you're not going to be eating it all, to be keeping it in the fridge, then it's a great option to be able to keep it in your freezer as well. I also really love using the freezer for things like leftovers. If you're making like a large batch of soup or sauce or curry, things like this freeze very well. And it's a great way of setting yourself up for success if you are looking to like meal prep and take a little bit of think work out of your day. Being able to put it in the freezer and then defrost it later is always fantastic. I really love freezing things in smaller portions. I really feel like we've all had that like massive container that we can't break apart. So freezing things kind of in a portion that you're going to be able to pack away. Make sure that you are cooling things down before placing it in the freezer and or the fridge. Make sure that there's no steam. That's obviously just very important in terms of food safety, making sure that there's no bacteria growth. Things have to kind of stay within a safe limit when you are transferring it from a warm environment to a cold environment. Make sure you're defrosting things in the fridge or in cold water. Give yourself enough time to do that. And then as I mentioned before, freeze food in its freshest possible state, but keep in mind that when you do defrost it, you start it from the point that you put it away in your freezer. So like if you freeze ground beef after it's been in the fridge for 4 or 5 days, make sure you eat that right away as soon as you defrost, because it's kind of right at that tipping point. You don't want to be kind of freezing, reheating multiple things over and over again. So that's where individual or at least smaller size portions comes into handy. This is something that I also haven't always done, but it's something that I'm getting into more now is identifying things with freezer tags, or at least like with a little bit of painter's tape or something. So I keep in mind how long things have been in my freezer. I think everyone has kind of like those things that they're just kind of have no real recollection, but time moves very quickly and it's really just not something that we should be expected to always keep in our brain. So setting ourselves up for success is something that I like to do, especially when it comes to just like labeling things very quickly, even if it's just like the month and the year. If you can limit the amount of oxygen, you can do a little trick where you take a straw, if you have like a metal straw or anything in a Ziploc bag or whatever you're using, and trying to take out as much air as possible. You could freeze things on a tray. I do this for like strawberry, chocolate covered strawberries. It's gonna be Valentine's Day. So if you ever want to do that or any other treats, you can freeze it on some sort of tray. Blanching vegetables can be very helpful because when you do freeze certain vegetables, sometimes they don't take to being frozen and it can actually explode their cell wall. So blanching them beforehand is great. And then this is not always possible, but if it is possible, kind of like the same with the fridge being not too full or not too empty, keeping your freezer at about 3/4 volume is really the best in terms of efficiency to making sure that it is freezing everything equally and well. And keeping a freezer inventory, or at least an idea of what you have in your freezer, is very helpful. Keeping things in the freezer for around 6 to 9 months and trying to clean it at least once a year would be fantastic. So Helen has shared lemons in a jar of water in the fridge. Love that. I think that works with most citrus, actually. That's a fantastic suggestion. Thank you, Helen. I really don't like when when your limes are on the counter for too long and then they become like absolutely rock solid. So that would probably avoid that. That's fantastic. So we're moving along quite well. I want to take a little bit of a breather and make sure if anyone has any, if they want to share any knowledge or any wisdom that they have, if they have any questions, happy to take a quick break just for a minute. And if not, then happy to keep chugging along into how we can start taking some more action. Amazing. All right. So now that you've got a mind full of ideas, it's time that we can sit down and we can think about what we want to achieve and kind of see how that's going to be incorporated into our own individual personal lives. It's important to remind you that you are not alone in this, so don't hesitate to involve people like your spouse, roommates, children, colleagues, friends. I really feel like behavioral changes, like anything, are really done best with accountability, with community. So, for example, if you have children, you can ask them to help store your food and use it as an opportunity to teach them as your best ways to preserve it. You can kind of make big food prep nights with your roommate or your partner. There's so many great ways to make sure that you're not like the only person in your household or home or greater community trying to combat food waste, because obviously it's just such a big problem and we're all just trying to do our best. So here are some things that we can do to make ourselves kind of feel less alone in our collective battle against food waste. So the first thing is donations. So donating to community fridges, collective kitchens. I don't know if people have seen, depending on where you live, if there's like community fridges available to pass along your surplus. So if you're noticing that maybe you're not finishing certain things or you have an excess, being able to donate it to community members less fortunate is obviously always a fantastic thing to do, especially now that we're kind of over the hump of the holidays. Usually donations and things like that do really peter off. So it's something to keep in mind. I love this. I think sharing conservation tips with neighbors and family and just being open to receiving tips and information. I've always been kind of in awe with the knowledge that's held by my community members, like even if it's just an older neighbor or if it's somebody in my family that just has like these tips and tricks. This kind of goes along with just the curiosity in learning and kind of seeing it as like this exploration of our relationship with food. yeah, leading on the people around you can be a really great resource. I find so many people have such great tips that I would have never actually thought of if I hadn't reached out to them. There's great community support online. There's like zero waste and like no food waste. There's so many fantastic communities online, especially on Facebook, in those Facebook groups. I really enjoy, again, just like another resource of just like so many really incredible people. And then there's the Traveling Jar. You can follow them on social media. And with Earth Day Canada, learn about it, more advanced preparation methods. We can like talk about canning, dehydration, lacto fermentation. You can start making your own kombucha. There's so many options. And I really would just love to have some time now for all of us in the chat to kind of go over what we think our next move would be, what we are really excited to bring into our lifestyle going forward. I'll share my first one. It was cleaning my fridge. Cleaning my fridge and taking a better kind of inventory of my stock, of my pantry and everything so that I can do a better job when I go grocery shopping of realizing what I have and what I don't have. That's something that I did recently this week. So that's one of my moves. More meal planning. That's a great one. It's a fantastic way to set yourself up for success. You'll understand what you're eating, what you're not eating. It takes a bit of think workout. I feel like that's a lot of it for me, is understanding that the more you kind of think ahead, the more it takes away that think work when you do get busy throughout the rest of the week. That's a great one. I also have some examples here if people are having trouble thinking of what they want to do next. You can analyze your compost. I know some people said that they live in apartment buildings, so that might not be accessible to them. But analyzing what food you're throwing away often, I think is also another way of understanding that. So if you notice that you're throwing away kale, you're always trying to make kale happen and you're just not using it by the end of the week, maybe making sure that the next time you do groceries, you're not buying kale, or just try to be very conscious with, excuse me, creating recipes that intentionally kind of involve the produce that you might be throwing away a lot. People have mentioned this. Clean the fridge. Sue said, I like the idea of a community fridge using my mason jars, lots from failed preservation experiments. Oh my God, that's amazing. Good for you for already kind of getting experimental. I'd love to know what you have learned so far, what you've tried to preserve. People have mentioned cleaning out your fridge, pantry, and cabinets, testing the feet in the water preservation technique. Talking too much. I really like this one because I actually have some carrots that I got from the market that were a little like soft, and they kind of look like Gumby. And I put them in some cold water in my fridge and they have crisped right up, and I'm very excited about it. So stuff like that is very easy. Wendy said, try to change my granddaughter's shopping habits. Too much waste. Wonderful. Great to be able to kind of hand that down to the younger generation as well. Jam is easy. Pickles make me scared about botulism. I totally get that as well. I also know that you can do things like quick pickling. That's something that I do a lot, like with red onions or jalapenos. I don't get into like the proper canning, but just a quick pickle and some vinegar and sugar usually does the trick for me. But jam is fantastic. Oh, amazing. Carmen said she usually does food preparation and cans her tomatoes. That's amazing. Romaine lettuce wrap with paper towel and foil. Fantastic. See, look, we have so much information flowing in this group already. Oh, I already said this one. Save a softened vegetable by bathing it in cold water. I just did that with my carrots. It actually works incredibly. It's really fantastic. And also with lettuce, if it still has the kind of stump on it, you could also put it in a little bit of water in your fridge, and that helps it as well. So sorry, excuse me. And then, yeah, an easy one is to just check that the food that you currently have in your fridge is stored properly. So going through, making sure that things are sealed where they need to be sealed, trying to do that as much as possible. May says, I don't waste as much food, but I'm trying to have less plastic in my household. That's incredible. first of all, kudos. It's not easy. Obviously, plastic has become so incredibly integrated into our food system. It's kind of alarming. But I really think that that's a noble effort. I think shopping local, and as Carmen said, also trying to buy seasonal veggies. If you have access to local markets, farmers markets, and trying to buy things as much from the source as possible, I find that those things often coincide with being a little bit less plastic heavy. Obviously, not always accessible or an option depending on where you live, but it can be a great option if you are looking to reduce plastic. Even I find like just like more local, smaller grocers. I used to have this relationship with a grocer where they just like wouldn't package like zucchinis and things in plastic for me. They would like leave them off to the side, but they would wrap the other ones in styrofoam and plastic, but I would ask for like mine not to be wrapped. So you could always be that person. It kind of depends on what your relationship is with your local market, but again, I really think that a through line for this for me is getting curious, and it's also about bridging community. So much of our food system has become so kind of dissected and compartmentalized, and unfortunately, that often means that people really don't have relationship or camaraderie with the people that grow our food. So I think the more that we have this curiosity and this thirst for community, the more it also benefits the planet and it benefits our relationships. So I really encourage that if that's at all possible. We're wrapping up a little early. I hope I didn't talk too fast. I really, really appreciate all of your engagement in the chat. And I really appreciate for you spending some time of your evening with me. It means quite a lot. All of your kind of resources are going to be sent to you in the days following. I'll let people keep continuing to share, obviously, information. I'm going to send you. Oh, people are still sharing. Sorry. Nice. I do gardening and usually I have tomatoes, chilies, zucchinis, and jalapenos. That's incredible. I need to get more into gardening. I've recently moved country, so I'm not I have to suss out my gardening situation. But I will send you these links here. But you don't have to worry about clicking on all of them or saving them. They're all going to be sent to you in an email anyway in the coming days. So no stress. If you're not able to click on it in time, you can just wait for that email. That bottom link is a satisfaction survey. Would love to hear, or the organization would love to hear how I did. But yeah, overall, I really, really appreciate it. I am technically in the 14th, February 14th. So happy Valentine's Day to you all. I hope you find some time to show yourself some love, show the earth some love, show the people in your life some love. Again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have all a great evening. Thank you so much.